about 35 years, we have 7 children. And we didn't get married till I was 35, almost 36.
A few days before his 36th birthday. And I was 28.
First marriage, only marriage.
Yeah. And I always wanted to get married. And, you get to be the age of 28 and you start wondering if you're ever going to get married. But I was quite excited to be getting married. And I know I'm really unusual. I always wanted a dozen kids. I grew up in a large family, 8 kids. I loved it, and I wanted to have a bunch of kids. But I knew getting married at the age of 28, that was not going to happen. So.
And as a typical guy, I never thought about how many kids I wanted. I had the idea.
And we actually didn't
we'll get
discuss
married,
this
we'll have children.
before we got married, which, in this day and age, I say it's a good thing to talk about.
It is a good thing to talk about, but, I was busy in my job traveling. I always liked to travel, and it just wasn't, I thought I'll get married someday, mm-hmm. but it wasn't an issue in my life, whether I would get married, how many children I would have, or anything along those lines.
Yeah. So we met in, a friend of mine's fiance had told me, I was on a retreat, and had told me, there's this guy you have to meet. Well, it was Robert.
That was me.
We never had a formal introduction, but they invited me to this young adult prayer group, which Robert was one of the leaders. And so I went to that, and we had been friends, working in ministry together, not dating for much of it. But
I was about 32 at the time. I had just purchased a small ranch house and straightened it up before prayer group, and then invited everybody over afterwards for a housewarming party. It was like a Friday night.
Mm-hmm. And that was the first one that I went to.
Yeah.
So it was kind of.
So we met. She was one of, probably about 25 people who came to the get together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The prayer group, we had like 50 or 70. It was a large young adult prayer group at the time.
Yes. So eventually, we got to know each other. We got married in 1988. Mm-hmm. And in May, I think it was Memorial Day weekend, right? And went on a honeymoon and started our life together. Mm-hmm. We eventually had 7 children. The first child we had, you became pregnant within a month. A couple months of our getting married. I remember we were running.
Yes.
We were actually running.
I had the feeling,
we like
a woman's body, you kind of know sometimes that I was suspecting maybe I was pregnant. I hadn't taken any tests. We were out running.
Around the neighborhood. It was a sunny afternoon.
And I tell him that, I think I might be pregnant. His face turned bright red. That was not what he was thinking at this point.
Yeah, I remember that. It wasn't like a negative feeling. It was like
like a shock, like, oh my gosh. Which I was totally fine with, because I was like, hey.
Now, you have to admit, I adapted pretty quickly.
He did adapt
very
quickly.
Like within 60 seconds?
Yeah, like, okay. Yeah, you did adapt very quickly.
Okay, I can handle that. Yeah, all right, good, we're going to have a child.
Yeah.
Then I was okay with it.
Yeah.
I was never not okay with it, but it was, like when the first time in your life that you realize you're going to be a father, mm-hmm. there's a moment of realization there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, and again, these are things we had never talked about. It's a good thing to talk about. We had never talked about, would I continue working? Would I be a stay-at-home mom? I had an MBA. You have a master's in international business. And I had a good job. I was bringing in half the income to, our marriage. And when we finally did discuss this...
I remember we were walking into Michael's, the craft store.
Oh, yeah.
Over in Schaumburg. And I remember saying to you, well, do you want to stay home or do you want to work?
My reaction was, are you crazy? I always wanted to stay home. I knew that this was the best thing for children, to be able to stay home. I had always hoped that I could do that, and I couldn't believe that he, was asking me what I,
Well, what I was trying to do is just be like, what do you want?
Yeah, I know,
I
which
didn't
is great. But I'm just saying, for me, I was like,
Which is another indication that I had not thought deeply about these issues.
yeah. But so I was quite happy.
Because if I had thought about it, I would realize, oh yeah, do I want somebody else bringing up my children? No, I want my wife bringing up her children.
Yeah.
You know.
So I was, even though it was going to cut our income in half, I wanted to be home. I wanted to be the one raising my children.
So she said, stay home, and I'm like, okay, we'll do that.
Yeah. And so then he was like,
I never really had a concern. I was never a rich man. I never had a concern about money. You know, the Lord always provided what we needed.
Yeah.
And there we go.
And really amazingly, within a few years after doing this, our income was back up to where it was with the two of us.
Yes.
So the Lord just took care of
Our needs.
our needs. So it was fine. But I was willing. I mean, I didn't need a lot. I didn't need a lot of stuff. I didn't, I could be frugal. So I knew that I could make it work on one income. And that was my goal. Regardless of what our income was, I really wanted to make it work on one income. And actually, when we got married, though, we did live on one income.
Oh, we did.
Right?
Yeah, even though you were making a salary, we didn't spend it.
We just saved all of my income and lived off of your income.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were kind of already working towards me staying home, but
Yeah.
but so did we say we have 7 children, and the first 5, when the 5th one was born, the oldest was 6 years old.
And it's when
So they were very close in line.
And so when the 5th one was born, it was at that time that I realized I needed to change jobs. I had been working internationally. I worked for a U.S. manufacturer, but internationally. I was traveling a lot on extended trips, 1 week or more trips, sometimes a little less, but, flying off to Argentina or wherever. And it's not easy, although you're kind of a pro, it's not easy to bring up 5 children alone when I'm away for several days. And so we decided together that, I should probably get something
for
where
the
I'm not
kids'
traveling.
sake. I mean, when you're gone that long, 5 days or a week or 2 weeks is what they were requiring you at that point.
Yeah.
That's a long time for the child. I mean, that's like, a big percentage of their life. So to be gone that long, I don't think it was healthy.
No, I agree. I remember I came home from one trip when Michael was our oldest child was young. Was like not quite 2, maybe 1.5. And I had been away for almost 2 weeks, I remember. And I came back and he didn't recognize me. And it took him...
When your child is backing away from you...
Yeah. It took him about a couple minutes, hugging on his mother, looking at me before he remembered, kind of, and then he ran over and gave me a hug.
So
that's kind of a sign that, your children need you.
Yes.
The relationship is not just because you're the parent, it's because you're there.
Right.
Because you're working with them, you're talking with them, you're picking them up, you're playing with them. That's the relationship of a parent and a child.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a very organized person. All moms are not naturally that way. So it was a little bit easier for me than maybe other people who are have to work harder at, organizing a family. So for me, it wasn't bad. I can see how for some people that would be very difficult to manage. But, I mean, he would travel and he would do the, yard work when he'd get home on the weekend. Now, for me, I'm a people person. So when he comes home, I don't want him doing yard work because I want him to be with me. The classic female, would like personal attention and time. And so I started mowing the lawn and trimming bushes for the pure sake of that we could have more time together as a couple.
I never complained about that either.
But what I discovered, I loved it because I could mow the lawn and the kids couldn't mess it up. You clean your house and then it could be 2 minutes later, you got
You got all the toys all over.
everything all over, and it's like I just cleaned the house.
Yeah.
So I actually grew to love doing outside work because I could do it, and it wouldn't need to be done for another week.
Yeah.
So that was very nice.
What's your vision for this channel? What do you want to encourage people with?
Well, you never think everybody has life experience, and we realize that we have a lot of experience that we could help maybe some young parents who are starting off, who didn't necessarily have the experience that I had a lot of experience growing up of how to raise a family because of being in a large family and parenting. But so many people don't have that, and so it's kind of a frightening thing. It can be to have children and have no clue. I mean, I have to say, when we got married, when we had our first, you had no idea how to hold a baby.
No, I remember we were over at your brother's house, and your sister-in-law came out. She had just had a baby, and she was holding the baby like a
Draped over.
draped over her arm, like kind of like a towel draped over her arm, like a dish towel. And I'm like, and you were pregnant, and you were due within
A few months.
like 2 or 3 months. And I said, "Oh, can you hold a baby like that?" And she said, "Sure. You want to try?" And I said, "Sure." So I put the baby over my arm, and that works. So that was my first experience holding a baby, but it was like as a dish towel.
Right. So Robert pretty much had to go from ground zero and learn everything
It never frightened me.
within our marriage.
Now, it always surprises me now when we run into young couples who are like frightened or who are unsure of how to take care of a child or what to do or how to discipline or how to think about discipline. It's like what I would consider maybe common sense, or probably because we have 7 children and it's like we've been through this. It's like, oh my gosh, people don't understand these things. You don't understand how to deal with a toddler, how to say no, how to deal with these issues, or how to handle our relationship when we have children. Well, it seems natural to me
At this point.
And you forget that, well, maybe people don't have this perspective or this experience. So we hope
and that we had to learn along the way.
yeah, so we hope, well, maybe we can use some of our experience to explain how we dealt with these issues and hopefully make it simpler for people who are listening.
And
Less
to
frightening.
make not just that, but I love our family. And, we have a good marriage, and I love my children. I enjoyed the process. Is it work? Absolutely. But, you should be able to enjoy your marriage and enjoy your children or your child.
You can be best friends with your spouse and best friends with your children and not have tension. As the children grow, of course, our children are adults now. As the children grow, you become friends. You go from a parent-child relationship to a friend relationship. And that's built on trust and love. And this is very possible.
But it's a wonderful thing, having children is a wonderful thing. You will never regret it. I remember being in a Jewel parking lot, and I would bring all my kids to the store when I went shopping. And one lady stopped me in the parking lot, and she said, said she admired my having, I don't know how many kids I had at that point, many. And she said, and she was probably, I don't know, upper 40s, in her 40s. And she said that she has one regret, and that was that she didn't have more children. And at that point, it's too late. You get in your 40s.
It's too late.
It's a lot harder to get pregnant. It's a lot harder to carry. And so she regretted that she didn't have more children. After she could see the perspective of life. When you're young, you think, oh, I don't want children. I want to do my thing. I want to do this. I want 1, or I want 2, or whatever your, vision is. But afterwards, when everybody's grown up and you look back, you realize, oh, this is a good thing.
Yeah, embrace the change. Just because you have a certain lifestyle when you're in your early 20s or your late teens doesn't mean that you need to keep that lifestyle, or it's the best lifestyle for you to keep.
Or you're in your mid-30s.
Or your mid-30s.
Wherever you are, where you get
are.
married.
It's a wonderful change, having a family, and it brings great happiness.
Yeah.
just have to be willing to adapt and to change and embrace the change, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.